Hello, everybody. So, in the spirit of staying true to the channel's initial idea, which is to talk about beating the denominator, i.e., beating money growth, I feel compelled to talk to you about Bitcoin and about MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy just reported its Q2, and of course, MicroStrategy is a proxy for Bitcoin, and it is a inherently controversial slash provocative, I would say, provocative stock. But that's the nature of innovation. And that is the nature of so many of the stocks that I cover on the channel. I typically tend to get interested in stocks when 95% of the people disagree with me. Right? That's how you know the adoption is not there. That's how you know there is no consensus around an idea, getting in an idea early. Right, that's key to all of the stocks that I follow, because I want to invest in that adoption curve, and you want to get into that adoption curve very early on, right? When less than 5% of people get it, so that you can actually get a chance at catching that exponential growth. And sometimes you miss it, sometimes you're entirely wrong. But if you're right on just a few stocks and technologies, that's enough for you, and that's enough to have an outstanding investment return. So this is the type of investing that I do. And also, and I'm being facetious here, but I have to find something else to cover than Opendoor, because it seems like Opendoor is not going bankrupt anymore. It seems like the consensus is gone on Opendoor, or the anti-Opendoor consensus is gone. When I was covering Opendoor at the early days of the channel, 95% of folks disagreed with me. I even lost subscribers on this, because I had subscribers telling me that my channel could not be taken seriously because of my Opendoor videos. But of course, you have stocks. Sometimes I cover stocks that are more out on the risk curve, and that's okay, right? Bitcoin is probably a little more out on the risk curve, but we'll see why I love Bitcoin. And I've covered it multiple times on the channel. It's my second biggest position. I believe it's a wonderful edge against monetary printing, and the inevitable trending of the US dollar towards zero, right? Which in 100 years, the currency will have lost 99% of its value. And you can be certain of that. And that is not me saying that, but it's Charlie Munger saying that, the same man who absolutely hates Bitcoin. So anyways, innovation is controversial, so let me tell you about MicroStrategy and Bitcoin in general, and why I own MicroStrategy and how they did. How was Q2 for them, and is the stock right now at the right good value, or is it overvalued, undervalued? Let me get started. So let me tell you about MicroStrategy. So I own MicroStrategy. Mostly, 99% of the reason why I own it is because of their Bitcoin Treasury Strategy. What is a Bitcoin Treasury Strategy? Is they don't pay a dividend. They don't buy treasuries to park cash. No, every bit of cash flow that they have, they buy Bitcoin, and they hold it in a corporate treasury, right? A big treasure chest of Bitcoin. So much so that most of the value of the stock now can be explained by how much Bitcoin they own. It is a proxy of Bitcoin, as opposed to being a derivative of the US dollar, which is stunning to me. What do they do? What's their business? Well, their business is not entirely bad, right? It's not, they don't have a mall or something like that. No, their business is a business intelligence software. It's an average business, quite frankly, would never be in my top 100 if this stock had no Bitcoin strategy. But the business generates a steady cash flow, and that steady cash flow, MicroStrategy turns it into Bitcoin. And a third thing that I have to say is that, of course, I prefer pure form Bitcoin, and I think you'll find is that a lot of Bitcoiners much prefer pure form Bitcoin. Why do we prefer pure form Bitcoin? Because pure form Bitcoin is just money as free speech, right? Money as speech. You just memorize a phrase, right? The proper way to buy Bitcoin is, you go in an exchange, you get one of these wallets like that, or you don't even need to get a wallet. You can just take a computer, generate the key, and making sure your operation security is pretty high, but you can just generate your key, memorize that key, and then boom, you have your Bitcoin in your head. That's the original idea. That's the fundamental idea. That's money as free speech. But Nonetheless, there's other ways to own Bitcoin. And of course, all of the scams that you hear about Bitcoin in 2021, that everything had to do with layer 3 Bitcoin, which is owning Bitcoin on an app. There's an even greater layer of Bitcoin, which I call layer 4 Bitcoin, which is when you own a stock that owns Bitcoin. And by the way, feel free to pause here if you're interested in the different ways to own Bitcoin. But it's the same as the US dollar, right? You can own US dollar in the form of paper that you have in your pocket, or you can own it in the form of a bank that promises you that they're going to give it to you, or you can own it with a stock that actually owns cash. It's kind of the same thing, but it's layer 4 Bitcoin, right? You own Bitcoin four layers removed from the protocol. And so why would I want to do that, right? Well, I believe for a small portion of a portfolio, it's a good idea because the legacy system may still dominate for a decade or more, right? Even though if you talk to more hardcore Bitcoiners, they'll tell you it's always on the verge of collapse. I think it may still dominate for at least a decade, this legacy system that we're in. And thus, there's advantages to owning a stock and not Bitcoin, but a stock. And a big advantage, of course, is margin. Another advantage is options. And of course, a lot of people take advantage of that because now you have MicroStrategy, which is a marginable security. And you could own all of your Bitcoin in the form of MicroStrategy. And then as the price of Bitcoin goes up, you can just borrow a little more, borrow a little more, borrow a little more, and do the classic buy, borrow, die strategy that so many wealthy people do. Yeah, right, and don't pay taxes doing it. So that's kind of beauty. It's kind of one of the directions that I want to take the channel to and discuss this more in depth in the channel. These very important methods of fiat and understanding how fiat works, right? So MicroStrategy. There's two corporate strategies for MicroStrategy. They do business intelligence and they do Bitcoin. So let me go through the earnings and let me tell you about their Q2, starting first with business intelligence. So what are they doing in the business? So business intelligence, I mean, I'm going to simplifying and tell you they do dashboards. They do dashboards for like consumer retail, for banks. The manager of a bank, they log in and they open this app and it's a dashboard and it tells them all of the performance. That's what business intelligence is. That is what they do. Total revenues are down year over year or flat on a constant currency basis, only down 1%. So again, if you take into account monetary inflation, that is not good. However, there is a reason why it's down. This company, just like, for example, if you follow UiPath is going through the exact same process right now. Why is revenue not doing too well? Is because they're not pushing the licenses anymore. They're trying to, this is a company, keep in mind, that was founded in the late 90s. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to move away from selling a license, right? And they're trying to move into selling a subscription. And as a result of that, they're not pushing their sales of licenses, but they're pushing their sales of subscription. So this is a company whose revenue mix is changing. And there's a lot of legacy IT companies that are like that are trying to push subscriptions and to get away from licenses. It's very similar to what Microsoft did with Office, right? Now it's Office 365, $5 a month or whatever they charge. And it used to be you go to the store, you pay $119 and you have a license, and then a new version has to come. So MicroStrategy is going through this transition. I expect this will take many years to go fully through this transition. But once you're at this transition, of course, your cash flows are going to be absolutely amazing. Your cash flows are going to increase because you just turned licenses that are bought every couple of years or every years. You've just turned this into subscription services. So it's wonderful. And of course, this is their effort, right? The subscription service is cloud powered. It's all in the cloud. It works across all of your cloud platforms. They've sprinkled a little bit of AI. I mean, this is of course it connects to your API, so you can know what's going on in the business. This is a core IT company. They're a main player in that space. And actually, when you look at the positioning in that space, right, it's important to note that. According to Gartner, MicroStrategy is a niche player, but almost becoming a challenger actually. So it's one of the better niche players out there. What's very important to know is what is the main driver of their sale. Of course, is that they are independent. They're truly very independent. They don't depend from big tech. And remember, most business strategy software is owned by big tech. It's owned by Microsoft. It's owned by Salesforce, right? Tableau is owned by Salesforce, and it's owned by SAP. So sometimes companies, they don't want to be dependent, and because they don't want to be dependent on big tech giants, they have a built-in incentive to go with a small player that's going to be more independent, more likely to cut you a deal. And that's what MicroStrategy does. They are lower cost than Tableau, or lower cost than running BI on Azure. They also do things about no-code interface, low-code ease of use, and they have a few advantages. And most of their competitors got acquired by big tech, which means that they're kind of a last standing. And this is what they do. If you want to know what they do, which I assume a lot of people don't really care because you buy this for a Bitcoin. But if you want to know what they do, this is the kind of thing that they do. This is like a dashboard that they sell to banks, and that's a branch, and the manager logs in the morning and sees everything, sees employee performance. That's dashboards, business intelligence. That's what they do. So the business is steady Eddie. Don't expect anything like I'm covering in the stocks on the channel, but not a dying business. They don't operate malls. They don't run legacy pharmacies. They don't do any of that, right? It's still a business that's well within the trends of today. Now, what's the strategy we care about? I care about is Bitcoin. So their strategy for Bitcoin is, of course, whenever that cash flow comes through, they turn it into Bitcoin. And they also do a lot of financial engineering. So they will issue new shares opportunistically. They will raise money opportunistically. They will do this financial engineering to always try to acquire more Bitcoin and grow the corporate strategy of acquiring Bitcoin. That's their strategy. And they've been doing so well. So look at that. And really what's amazing is the consistency, right? Michael Saylor has not stopped believing in Bitcoin. And every quarter, as new cash flow comes in, you add more Bitcoin. More Bitcoin is added. And you can see quarter after quarter, the pile slowly grows. And that's the magic of this stock. When you own this stock, you don't get dividend checks. You get a stock that has a pile of Bitcoin that is growing, which to me is a fascinating value proposition from a theoretical standpoint, where you own layer 4, right? Well, a layer 4 Bitcoin that you own, well anchored within the legacy system, yet that ownership of Bitcoin increases, which is stunning. It's kind of turning a passive investment, right? Bitcoin is a passive investment. You're turning it into an active investment, which is very interesting with that. And let's do the math, right? Answering the final question, is MicroStrategy expensive? In a nutshell, I think it's a little expensive right now. But let me walk you through the math. 152,000 Bitcoin. 153, let's call it 29,000 right now. It's a nifty $4.46 billion of Bitcoin that they got. That's a lot of Bitcoin right there. The stock trades always at a multiple of BTC plus the underlying value of the business, and oftentimes it's gonna be a key differentiator between being interested and not interested in this stock is gonna be how much do you value the business intelligence software business division that they have. How much do you value it at? If you bought this stock, what is it, five or 6 months ago when I covered it, there was no intrinsic value placed on the BI software, like none whatsoever. The stock was trading lower than all of the Bitcoin that it had on its balance sheet. It's not the case anymore, and mostly because actually their software, they're implementing a lot of AI, and a lot of the market is getting excited about AI right now. But if you do the calculation, stocks in my usual spreadsheet, they trade at 17 times gross profit. This is a stock that has about $400 million a year of gross profits. So if I were to be very, very negative and assume a 10 times gross profit, I would say the business is worth $4 billion, which means that the total business value would be 4.46 in Bitcoin plus $4 billion for the business. That would be an 8.46 billion. Also, and I want to note this, it's noteworthy to say because of indefinite tangible accounting, it's very, very tough to look at the net margin for a company like MicroStrategy, because when Bitcoin trades down, they have to mark it down. So the investor is almost blind studying metrics that are way further down on the balance sheet. I mean, this is the same rationale as to why I tend to like really the max I look at is gross profit, because otherwise it gets convoluted, right? And you don't really know what's what, why did they choose to classify one expense in one way or one expense in another way. I always say sales don't lie. The next best thing after sales is gross profit. And in my view of the stock market, I try to look at multiples of either sales or gross profit. That's what I try to look at. But anyways, if you look at the enterprise value right now, it's 8.29 billion, and the company, based on this back of a napkin math, is worth 8.46 billion. So yeah, it's trading pretty much on par, which is not ideal, because ideally you would want to buy this cheaper than the Bitcoin, right? And it's noteworthy that, of course, I use enterprise value because I want to penalize companies that have debt, even if it's MicroStrategy, and I love MicroStrategy. I want to penalize them because they have debt, right? And if they didn't have debt, the stock actually would look much more appealing, because you'd be looking at a stock at about 6 billion market cap, and you'd be like, oh, they own this much Bitcoin. The stock would look much more appealing if you overlooked the debt, but I am not overlooking the debt right here. So MicroStrategy right now, a bit pricey, but that probably means, in my view, that the market is anticipating a big run in Bitcoin, as well as some AI-related valuation. So this is a stock, in my view, that is within two mega trends right now, right? AI and Bitcoin. So so I like it very much. I own it. I was buying much more heavily last year, towards the end of last year. And of course, this is a stock that if you were to buy it, you would have to have a fundamental belief in Bitcoin. And let me just briefly tell you why I believe in Bitcoin. And of course, this will not be very helpful if you're very knowledgeable about Bitcoin. But really quickly, right off the top of my head, the reasons as to why would anybody want to own Bitcoin, through layer 4, such as MicroStrategy, or in your head, layer 1, through just a passphrase that you remember. But why would you want to own Bitcoin? Well, in many ways, Bitcoin is as powerful as the internet, and some, like if you go into the hardcore Bitcoiners, they would argue it's even more significant of an invention than the internet, right? It's the invention of something entirely new. Nonetheless, from an IP standpoint, it rests on a very low-level protocol, which means that it's very, very hard to shut down, right? You would need to shut down all networking to shut down Bitcoin. It's nearly impossible to shut down, and it can't get corrupted, of course, unless you find a way to gather 5% of the world's energy, and also to gather about $20 billion worth of semiconductors. And of course, you want to gather that in about 2 weeks, because the difficulty adjusts. And then if you're not able to manifest these semis and manifest this energy in a matter of weeks, then the protocol will have moved on, the difficulty will have increased, and it will be an unending quest of you trying to get all of this energy and trying to get all of these semis. So essentially the way to look at Bitcoin is that it allows a defense for your asset that is superior to that of any nation. In a nutshell, that's how I would summarize it, which is very powerful, which is why it's money as free speech. That's why I look at it, what's in your head is in your head. Nobody knows what's in your head. This is kind of the same way, but for money. There will never be more than 21 million, that should have been a BTC sign. There will be never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. It's actually more like 15 or, I should have put BTC now sign here, 15 or 16 million actually, because of course a lot of people lose them, especially in the early days. There were a lot of mistakes made, and so we've lost a lot of Bitcoin. And also, I believe a major trend that you're going to have in Bitcoin is that you're going to have people who are going to decide to just die with their Bitcoin and not give their Bitcoin to anybody else. And that might be, I mean, if you read a lot of essays on this, that might be the most altruistic thing you could do, would be to die with your Bitcoin, because then you're donating money to the entire mankind, which is absolutely stunning if you really think about it. The price cannot increase supply. This is very important. This is why gold can't get out of its own way, because if gold trades at $5,000 an ounce, what's going to happen is that most people, most miners are going to go mine gold. Right? And then you have more supply of gold and it drops the price. So no matter what you do, there can't ever be more supply of Bitcoin, right? It's the new supply reduces the value of whatever you own, right? I mean, if you own a house in a small town and there's a giant neighborhood that is getting built next to your house, those new houses are going to hurt the value of your house. Right? This is something that is well understood in a lot of very pricey real estate areas. The same is true. For gold. The same is true for any commodity. This is a commodity whose supply cannot increase, and it cannot increase. Why? Because the code itself can't be corrupted without the 5% of the world's electricity, which is why spending energy, right? Proof of work, spending energy is so essential. It's so essential, because if you didn't have to spend the energy, then you could corrupt it. You could attack it, right? What's very important. Anyways, moving on. Having every 4 years. So there's having every 4 years, which means that the supply gets cut in half every 4 years. So it's even better than the price cannot increase supply, right? It's just the new supply, and most assets trade at the edge. The new supply at the edge is getting cut in half every 4 years, and that will be about April 2024 now. So that's why I think a lot of people in the market are anticipating a run in Bitcoin right now. Can't be seized. Now, you know, I would like everyone to reflect on what that means here. Can't be seized. The money is free speech. That use case alone has tremendous value. That use case has tremendous value. Imagine Latin America. Imagine China. Imagine people fleeing countries. It doesn't matter where you live, who you are, what community you're from. For the first time, you've created money that cannot be seized. I mean, this is the use case alone of that should mean that Bitcoin should be trading much higher. That use case alone. Then it had the Immaculate Conception. What do we mean by that? It's a mystery conception. We don't know who created it, right? Satoshi. We don't know who, he, she, they. We don't know anything about who created it. And because of that, it's a commodity. You can't deny that it's a commodity. There's nobody controlling it. No country, no person, no individual, nobody controls it. That's the Immaculate Conception of Bitcoin, which is absolutely stunning. It's an incorruptible property, right? It's property across space and across time. It's as incorruptible as the internet itself is incorruptible. Which, if you think about the internet, is like, yeah, if we were to like lose all power, the internet may stop, but it would just be a matter of restarting it, right? If we were to all lose connection, then you restart it and the software restarts. And lastly, as far as stocks go, it's not a fiat derivative like a stock, right? So your return is not going to be dependent on the devaluation of fiat, at least from the standpoint that it doesn't take in fiat, right? Bitcoin does not take in any money, right? It's not active, it's passive. And it's not a fiat contract like bonds. And a fiat contract is worse than a stock, in my opinion, because you're locking in losses. You're locking in real losses. That's what a fiat contract like a bond is. And I could go on. I realize there's dissent within the stock buying community and the Bitcoin community as a whole. But this disagreement, in my view, has no reason of existing. Bitcoin is a unique type of commodity. It is a new commodity. But it is a commodity that has very, very interesting features, which is why this, and critics will call it a bubble, which is why this bubble has lasted, 14, almost 15 years now of this bubble. And I do not believe it is a bubble. So anyways, this was not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like. Please subscribe. Don't unsubscribe because I talk of Bitcoin. I'm not talking about Bitcoin all the time. We can disagree, and it can be courteous, right? Nobody has to agree on everything, right? Anyways, not investment advice. Have a wonderful day.